Okay, so I'm going to do a commentary for a 25 Azure Vault Fortified. Um, it's the typical group that I've been doing with the Warrior, Feral Druid, Disc Priest, Prot Pally, and then me obviously as Frost Mage. Obviously this is about a week old, so just bear with me on that. So there's gonna be some things I don't remember, but I have been using Corrupting Rage in these keys, the Corrupting Rage file, the one that gives you a bunch of crit. And then I'll pause here to go over the talents. On Azure Vault, you obviously need Spell Steal for all the Arcane Furies, for the second boss room, stealing the Magic Reduction Shield. But then obviously talent-wise, I decided to go, this is Fort, so I went Frostbite Sub-Zero, and also Snowstorm um, instead of Wintertide. I definitely think Snowstorm is better for your overalls. It really depends on your group and what is going to be the pain points. Wintertide obviously better for bosses if bosses become being a pain point, but there's so much big trash pulls in these dungeons, or at least in Azure Vault, that you can get a lot of value out of Snowstorm especially. There is one thing that I did in this key that I normally don't, or I guess two things that I normally don't in this key. First one, I didn't take Dragon's Breath, just Fort Weeks. We talked that we kind of wanted that a little bit more damage this time, and I obviously had Blast Wave for stuns if we need it, and obviously we have Prot Pally and stuff, and Priest, Warrior stuns, all that. The other thing that I ended up changing in this time, which was not intended whatsoever, was I took Improved Blast Wave. That was not an intended part of my talent tree here. I was messing around with Improved Blast Wave the day before, just, chucking animals off a cliff, seeing how far Improved Blast Wave actually went, because I wanted to compare it to how far Typhoon actually knocked people, and I kind of just forgot to change it back, but it ends up actually working out in this key. It's definitely not as, you can use it still for interrupting casts, but I ended up using it. It's ended up being very good for the second boss for Azureblade. The knock distance of Improved Blast Wave turns out to be the exact distance that the ad spawned from the boss, so it saved our melee a lot of uptime. So like I said, I am going to be running the Corrupting Rage file. I'm also running Death Snare. I split Death Snare. For these packs, you want to make sure that you're spell stealing the Arcane Furies. The Arcane Furies actually do stack in Azure Vault from the Crystal Furies themselves. So especially packs like these, they're very good. You see, I have 2 stacks of them currently. So like I said, they do actually stack. Obviously, you see, it's a pretty good pull for Frost Mage, especially with Snowstorm, being able to run that there, and Lust. Obviously, just the typical AoE rotation, always making sure your Orb and Blizzard is out. If you don't have Orb or Blizzard, you can send an unprocced Flurry. If you don't have anything, Shifting Power to get Orb, Blizzard back, whatever. Root of Power, but yeah, that's just the typical AoE rotation for the majority of these packs. Again, for all of my Cone of Colds for these, I'm saving, well, not typically saving, but I'm using Ice Nova to be able to shatter all of the Cone of Colds. Basically, anything over like 3 or 4 targets, you want to be sending your flurries without a Frostbolt precast, because normally you'll have enough orb cooldown and haste in these packs to be able to use either Ice Nova, Blizzard, Frozen Orb, or Rune of Power. But yeah. We are deciding to do... I think we're actually deciding to do the frog route in this... a frog route in this 25 Azure Vault. Which is good and bad. It allows us to get bigger pulls at the end of the dungeon, but it kind of misses out on the value that a mage would get from all the Crystal Furies. Because since we're not getting the Crystal Furies, we don't get any of the spell steal value other than that first pull. I think the reason we do that first pull still is because it gets Lust on cooldown. It is Raging Week, Fortified Raging, which is a very bad affix for Fort. It requires soothes on a lot of mobs. Yeah, as you see, the Crystal Furies are casting Arcane Fury. You see, I spell stub both of them, and I now have both of them for 7 seconds. Again, like I said, I believe it's a 35% damage buff. So obviously a pretty big damage buff for us to be able to spell steal. I should be prioritizing Blizzard a little bit more there. I think I sent like 2 GCDs when Blizzard was off cooldown. So obviously not great, but I did decide to Frozen to Icy Veins here. I also didn't have Ice Nova on that pack. I had used it prior. Well, at least on that time when I had Snowstorm, so I decided to Frost Nova into Cone of Cold. If you don't have Ice Nova and you have a Snowstorm stack, you can always just Cone of Cold, or you can have Frost Nova into Cone of Cold. Another reason I kind of decided was because my Rune of Power was going to run out before my Icy Nova came back, and you want to get your Snowstorm going off. Right there is when I realized that I was running Improved Blast Wave, because I Blast Wave and the mobs went flying. So that was the first time I actually noticed that I was running Improved Blast Wave. But yeah, I was saying for Snowstorm, if you can't, you want to get your Snowstorm out in your Rune of Power, because that's obviously a big damage ability is your 30 stack Snowstorm. If you have to get it out in Rune of Power and you don't have Ice Nova to use it, you can just use Frost Nova to proc it. Forgot I had music playing in the VOD too. Oops. This is a very not great spot for Frost Mages, just because they're constantly having to kite the trees because of the why the eruptions they constantly spawn. Don't really worry about your damage in this part. It's really bad for Frost Mages. You see, I'm literally doing... So there, I actually clicked Ice Nova, or used Ice Nova and then Cone of Cold, and I didn't realize Ice Nova wasn't off cooldown, so I just used my Cone of Cold without shattering it. Wasn't too big of a difference for that pack, because these Arcane Tenders can't actually get frozen. So it wasn't too big of a loss, it was just a loss on the small saplings, but... This is a pretty good boss for Frost Mage. There's a lot of times that we actually get value from Snowstorm on this boss. Because we basically have Blizzard up almost, not the entire fight, but for a decent amount of the fight. Because of the saplings, the bursting guys that show up. I did make a mistake here, so my plan for defensives for every single one of the bursts is I plan on not using anything for that burst phase, or you can use Alter Time for every single one of those bursts. That lines up perfectly with every single one. or very, very closely to every single one. So the plan is you don't want to use your barrier for that original burst. You want to use your barrier for the second portion, the second thing of damage that's going to be coming out here, because this is the damage that will kill you if you don't have things for it. So my plan is always keeping barrier for that. You can alter time this first one. You can have mirror image going. You shouldn't really need any defenses for this first explosion, unless you are very low on health. But as you can see, very good boss for Frost Mage currently. I'm also running Snowstorm, so I am deciding that I'm going to save my Snowstorm stacks for when the big group of ads come out, instead of using them for like these few ads that come out here. I am blizzarding a little earlier than normal just because I want to make sure I actually don't lose my Snowstorm stacks. I don't have a weak aura or anything for Snowstorm to actually track when I would lose them, but you see, so I altered that explosion. That's the one I'm talking about. Altering that is pretty good. Like I said, lines up basically exactly with it every single time. I would want to save Rid of Power for these little phases. This is when you're going to want to burst phase. Obviously, it's not as necessary because obviously it is a little bit of, like, padding. But just trying to keep as much blizzard uptime as possible for these little ads. It does get a little unfortunate if you have like aggro of one of these ads. So you saw here, I should alter time again. Yeah, I alter time. I did barrier, which was a mistake. I shouldn't be barriering that, but obviously alter back to 100 health. I'm assuming I use some form of defensive here because I'm low health, or not. Okay, yeah, so I did end up using G for this one. So every single consuming stomp, like I said, you want some sort of defensive. Normally, just a barrier itself is good enough as long as you're 100% health. If you're not 100% health, you can ice block, you can mirror image, you can G-invis. But yeah, you can alter these stomps if you want, but typically I like saving alter for the smaller ones. The smaller explosions, the explosive brands, don't do as much damage, and it's a little better to alter time those, at least in my opinion. These consuming stomps will be doing a lot more damage, and have a lot bigger chance of actually just one-shotting you. So that's why I've been using defenses for those and alter time for the smaller chunks of damage. Again, a mistake for me using alter time. Since I used barrier again, I decided for this one mirror image. I wasn't gonna have barrier running. As you see, we actually had one that was up still. That's another reason why I like saving defensives for the consuming stomp, rather than using them for the explosive brand, is because if you do end up missing one, that's a time where you're actually going to need one of your bigger defensives. We missed it, and I mirror imaged, so 20% DR, and I still got chunked down to 20% health. So yeah. You see the timing is basically perfect for consuming stomp. If I go back here, when consuming stomp goes off, it's 50 seconds. It's a 50-second timer. So you'll have alter time up for every single consuming stomp, as long as you use it for the consuming stomp, or for the the explosive brand, my bad. I accidentally clicked a different scene, so I just changed scenes real quick. Don't mind that. that was during this VOD, so. We were disgusting. It's obviously a little harder for us to do because we weren't in comms. Since we had 1 minute on Lust, we decided we were gonna do this this elemental pack until my Lust was up, and then come back and do this pack. At least I think we ended up doing this pack. Two target here. It does feel kind of, the 2 target rotation does feel kind of ass in dungeons because you're technically supposed to be using Blizzard on 2 target, especially if it's not even if it's not an instant cast, which kind of sucks because casting Blizzard on 2 target just doesn't feel great. But so this is another great pull for mages in general, not just specifically Frost mages, because there's 4 of the Crystal Furies in this pack, so you can get 4 Arcane Fury stacks. I typically only go for 2 or 3, just because just spending 4 GCDs, taking them, by the time your 4th GCD ends, you'll probably only have like 5 seconds left on the first buff. So I really only take, I took 3 for this one. You should get 2 things of Arcane Furies, being able to steal them. Our tank did just get slammed by that. So again, like you don't really see me targeting them because I'm using a mouse over spell steal macro. At this point, I'm also out of mana. I'm out of mana to spell steal. Spell steal, I think, is like 50 or 55k mana for a Frost Mage, so you really only get 4 or 5 casts of it going off before you're out of mana. Another reason why I think it's kind of just better to spell steal like 3 of them, like 2 or 3 of them, and not worry about getting all of them. But yeah. I'm gonna end up using one of my interrupts for, yeah, I called me Diamond. It's really important, especially for these packs, that you get them grouped up quick. Just because if these elementals are far out while you're doing your AoE, and just casting Arcane Bolt, it's really hard to actually get damage on them or get the interrupts on Waking Bane. So yeah, I was using my interrupts here to just get the mobs in. So for Waking Bane, you either need to get Dispelled, or as mages we can Ice Block it. If you get it and it's in a bad time like this, you can actually just Ice Block to drop it. I Ice Block and immediately canceled my Ice Block to get out of it. The other important one in this cast is Icy Bindings. We basically put our tank on the Icy Bindings mob, unless the tank is like kiting for some reason, and then someone else has to get it. The only good thing with Icy Bindings, at least for me, as I'm running Ice Flows, Blink actually gets you out of Icy Bindings, so if you get trapped in these, and the big mob is doing his Forbidden Knowledge cast, which drops all the AoE things down, you can actually blink out of them, so that's pretty good. Like that, I can also blink out of the Thundering stuns. I obviously didn't see that there was a Thundering Circle under there, so I was just able to blink out and not die from the Forbidden Knowledge cast that was going to be going off. Again, you saw there, I get hit by another Waking Bane. Our priest just dispelled me. Okay. Sorry. Okay, this is another room that is relatively important for spell steals. These mobs, when they have the blue glow on them, they have a... Oh, I did not mean to do that. They have a 35% magic reduction. So when I spell steal one, I'll show you if I do end up spell stealing one. Yeah, it's this cast right here. I don't typically recommend spell stealing all of them because it's a 10-second buff that's on them. It does nothing offensively for us. It just helps our damage on them. And there's obviously you have to spell steal every single one, and it's a pretty frequent cast. It seems to be going off every about 20 seconds, which is a lot to spell steal. I typically think it's just worth spell stealing one and being able to focus that mob while he doesn't have the buff on him, and then once he dies, you can start spell stealing on a different one and focusing them. You can also have our priest can mass dispel them, which is very beneficial. Unfortunately, that's really the only things that can dispel them in our group. So I kind of just have to deal with the magic DR on them. Obviously, you see it's having mobs that have a 35% DR does kind of hurt my damage, but you know, it happens. Oh well. You saw that the Icy Binding cast actually missed, so you saw I could blink out of it. Luckily, it was enough time that there wasn't a unstable power that was about to land on me, or else people will die, so. Again, in these casts where there's really only one thing to interrupt, you don't have to make your tank be the only one that gets it. You can obviously all be focusing on it. It's really the only important things in these packs, other than when it's in the packs that also have like Waking Bane and you know, Arcane or Raging Arcane Bolts, but. I was dumb and was being greedy with my cast and just died there. I even had blink. I just tried finishing my cast, which is just on me for being greedy. I just shouldn't have done it. You obviously saw me go for the Icy Binding's interrupts, but my interrupt was still on cooldown. Unfortunately, as a ranged kick, especially as a longer ranged kick, ours is 24, but technically with the talent it goes down to 20 seconds. We can't really solo kicks. Any important kicks, most kicks are going to be shorter cooldowns, so you're going to need to... Yeah, you saw I said kick there. Kick was on there for for bindings. You're going to need to have other people help you with kicks. Unfortunately, that was a time where the guy was pretty far out of melee, so it was kind of basically just up to me to kick it, and obviously it was off cooldown, so... And times like that, you can be standing in melee, because our priest most likely would have mass dispelled. I think the other people got mass dispelled from the Icy Bindings cast on them. But obviously that's in hindsight, not really needed. There should be kicks on it, it was just the unfortunate timing for it. Okay, so this is where we start seeing the value of my improved Blast Wave. I ended up getting the first kick for this because there's only 2 images that spawn on the first area, or before the first intermission. So typically we're having our tank get the second one, or obviously another DPS. But this is also an area that hurts a lot for us. There's just a lot of damage going out. Typically you want to go in like a clockwise or counterclockwise and go all together. For me, I'm actually focusing one that's farther away from the group, but still standing with the group. I was focusing this guy and then ended up going back to this guy. Doesn't really matter too much. The only thing is you need to be aware of when you're actually killing these mobs, because the circles will bait on top of you wherever you die. But you always want to have your defensives rolling in this intermission, You always want to have barrier up as much as possible. You want to have mirror image. If you need to, G invis, health pot. Alter time's a little bit sketch because you can obviously alter time into one of these puddles or an orb. So just be very careful of that. The only good thing is there's not really any damage going out in this phase, other than if you get hit by a one of the bolts. So this is where I actually figured out that the Blast Wave knocks it into melee. Unfortunately for me, I am running Blink instead of Shimmer. I mean, it's not that unfortunate, but it's just my playstyle. It's just what I prefer. So it's a GCD for me to Blink, but as you see, it's a perfect distance to melee, where they lose 0 uptime. This is probably going to be something that I'm going to end up doing in Tyrannical Keys, because melee lose a lot of uptime on the boss when they have to run out for the ads. So basically this allows us to basically get every single kick possible on the mobs, if not close to every kick. If you Blast Wave the first, you kick the second, and Blast Wave the third. You can basically get every single kick that happens for these little ads, which, again, very beneficial for your melee. They lose, like I said, they lose a lot of uptime for having to run to these mobs and interrupt them. So it basically saves the melee from having to actually focus the ads at all. I can just knock them into melee and they never have to focus them. Like I said, it's just very, very beneficial. It does have a little downside for ads, because you can't actually use your Blast Wave as reliably for interrupts on ads, which is a little unfortunate, but mirror images are great to have for this phase, just from the amount of damage that's going out. Just a flat 20% DR and all the damage is great. I also G-invised, and like I said, alter time isn't great for it, just because you can alter time into a swirly, you can alter time into the orbs. As you see it there, it's literally just, it's like I said, it's perfect distance for melee. They lose basically 0 uptime having to run out, and they can get the melee kicks from now on. It's great for uptime. That's a huge issue on Tyrannical Keys, when you end up having to trying to phase it in three times or potentially 4 instead of 5 on Tyrannical Keys. So obviously learning it this week on a fortified week, it was very good. Obviously we did it in 2 phases here on fortified, which means most likely on Tyrannical we'll be trying to do it by a 3-phaser. We did end up lusting on this pack afterwards, just because I accidentally double lust here, because I was kind of just spamming it, which is really unfortunate. But because we had over 10 minutes left, and by a relatively decent margin, we had 12 minutes basically here. We were we were gonna get another lust in this dungeon, so that's kind of the reason why we decided to lust on pull in that first room. Obviously that first pull is a good lust value anyways on fortified weeks, but it also allows you to potentially get more than, it potentially allows you to get 4 lusts on a 34-minute timer. You basically need to lust as soon as possible if you're gonna actually be able to get 4 lust timers. So yeah, the only important part in here is the frogs don't do any damage. The breakers don't do any, or not the breakers, the whatever they're called. The smaller guys don't really do any damage. The main focus here is actually just targeting down the breakers, especially raging. If they raging shoulder slam or a raging beast-style roar, it will basically just one-shot your group. So it's very important for soothes and for focusing them down and for watching their health during it. I know I make a few mistakes later at near the ends of these. I think you see it in our next pack of the mistake I make, but yeah, breakers are very important for us to use defenses for, especially on Fortified Week. If you are getting a shoulder slam, make sure you have alter time or images, or you're blocking it or using barrier or G-invis, because the shoulder slams do hurt a lot. Yes, you saw our Feral Druid, who Ferals are one of like a very survivable class. They have great defensives. They got shoulder slammed, not even enraged or anything, and it chunked them from full to, you know, 20-30% health. So I was very lucky there. I should have actually used another defensive. You saw I got shoulder slammed, and I went from like 75% health down to like 12. I shouldn't risk that, and I should have just, you know, G-invised or something like that, or ice blocked. Yeah, so here, I got greedy and was not using defensives. I was just going all damage here still. I got B-Style roared into a shoulder slam. Obviously, I'm going to die. Just unlucky. And then I accidentally took the res into one of the null stomps. I was just paying attention to the breaker himself and making sure he was dead before trying to take any res. And I wasn't paying attention to the frogs. And I just took the res and immediately got fucking... I immediately got stomped. Which is unfortunate. But, yeah. I did decide to decline that B-res. I felt having a B-res... Well, again, I don't really have a tracker for it, just because... I mean, I probably should have a tracker, but... saving a B-res for that time, I think, was better than just having our druid... res me out of combat. There is one thing that I kind of want to discuss here. So neither me or the druid were in combat with his breaker. And he does a B-style roar. I haven't yet figured out if B-Style Roar is if you're in combat with them, or if it's a certain range, because both, it looks like the wave ends, it seems like there's this, you see this circle around the breaker, where they actually use their B-Style Roar. Neither me or the druid are in it, and neither of us actually got hit by the B-Style Roar. So, I'm wondering if B-Style Roar is a ranged ability, or something when you're in combat with it. If you can outrange it, that's obviously going to be a massive thing. So I kind of want to test that out. I'll probably test that out in a lower key here relatively soon, because that's obviously something really, really great to figure out, is if you can actually outrange it. But yeah. The only issue with outranging the breaker things, especially when you have these frogs, is the frogs target random mobs, or like random players. So you could technically get targeted by the frogs, and they will just jump way out of melee. So you want to try staying in melee for the frogs, so that they're actually baited. The melee jump, the jumps are actually baited into melee. So that's why you see him staying relatively close for these jumps. We also need to be very careful for these B-Style Roars. You saw 34%, and he's gonna... Like, if we did 1.6% more damage before that happened and he got enraged, we literally all just would have died. So obviously doing these, especially on raging, is very important to pay attention to their health. But yeah. You can, what I did there I wouldn't really recommend. I didn't know if I was going to get killed up or not, so I just G-invised. You can wait for the shoulder slam to actually go off on you. So you saw I did it while it was mid-cast. If you greater invis or invis mid-cast of the shoulder slam, it'll just target a different player. If you do it after the cast finishes and he charges you, it'll just cancel the charge, kind of like, you know, Fenrir jump does. There's kind of just like a min-maxy thing there for the shoulder the shoulder slam. Here, since we are running a priest, we are deciding that we mind soothe these last 2 breakers. Very beneficial, especially because these are scary mobs on fortified raging. Obviously, you see in these chain pulls, me losing Icy Veins was a significant damage loss. I'm literally doing tank damage. So that's, you know, great. For these, my tip for Telash Greywing, or mages that are obviously using Rune of Power, I would recommend when you get your Rune of Power and he's casting the Frozen Bombs, if you move all the way to the side of your Rune of Power while you're still in range of it, and then as soon as the Frozen Bomb goes off, move to the other side. I'll show you here what happens. Also, during this immune phase, you can still be generating procs, but don't use any of your actual procs. So don't use your Flurry, don't use your Finger to Frost, start charging Icicles, just be casting Frostbolts. So here you see in the Frozen Bomb, I'm moving all the way to the side, so I'm still in range of my Rune of Power. But when the Frozen Bomb goes off, I'm now going to be... My Rune of Power is no longer in the center of it. So typically people will, you know, get Frozen Bomb on the Rune of Power and they don't want to move. When the Frozen Bomb goes off, they're going to have to move out of the Rune of Power. Doing this allows you to actually still get your Rune of Power uptime. For here, I would also recommend, since I didn't have Greater Invis up yet, you can actually use normal Invis to cancel Icy Devastation. I wouldn't really entirely recommend it unless you know the cast is going to go on you and you're going to do it really early, but because it really only lost out on like 1 or 2 ticks of the Icy Devastation, but you can use Invis to cancel it. The way it works is you have to have, like, same thing that for the same thing for the Shoulder Slam and, you know, the Fenrir thing. You need the cast to actually go off on you first. You can't, like, pre-invis it. Otherwise, the Icy Devastation cast would just go on somebody else. So here, I actually am... As a mage, we have very good utility. Well, movement-wise. I'm obviously staying farther in the back because I know our priest doesn't really have much. So if you can stay farther back, it obviously might hurt you because you might get trapped by these Frozen Bombs. But obviously we have blinks to get out of it. So typically, if you can, give space to the people who don't have the mobility to get out of it. For every single one of these absolute 0 phases when you're on the bombs, I would highly recommend getting as many defensives as you can for them. The Frozen Bombs basically will never one-shot you unless you're... We'll see how much damage. So I do the Frozen Bomb thing here as well to get value out of my Rune of Power. It seems like it did about 60% of my health. I'll actually go back to see the exact amount. I obviously have no defensives rolling. I don't have Barrier. I don't have Mirror Image, and it did 100 to 42. Obviously that's a fortified week, so it'll be more in Tyrannical weeks, but. I'm not worried about doing the Frozen Bomb Rune of Power thing here, because I'm obviously going to need to get out of this area anyways. Again, here, I'm prioritizing having our priest getting out of these areas. It's a lot more important for them to actually have an escape route than me, just because I do have Blink. So I gave them the priority to get up closer. Obviously, they could have obviously stayed here and just, you know, ran out this way, but they got up ahead. Having Blink, obviously I can just do that, and I can just get out of the whole Frozen Bomb area. I am deciding not to use Mirror Image on a Tyrannical we did earlier, well, a week prior. Mirror Image, if you Mirror Image near the end of Telash and your Mirror Images are still up when you take the book down, your Mirror Images will drop to the final boss level, Umbral Skull's level, and they will actually reset the boss, so you'll basically lose like 30%, or like 30 seconds of uptime. So don't do that. It seems like these this is one thing that quaking actually, I'm not sure if it's actually fake or not, because it seems, I actually want to see if we successfully spread. It seems like we actually did successfully spread. This is one thing I'm still not positive about. I'm not sure if quaking is actually fixed for this zone. I never want to test it, so you saw me, I got out of it and ice blocked. But yeah. It's for quaking, be very careful for these the rune phases. But yeah, I'm not popping ice or mirror image or icy veins here, just because I'm obviously gonna want them for the start of the boss. And I'm not popping mirror image just because the mirror image is reset. I did end up losing my flask. Big oops on that. I don't have alchemy, so my flasks are only a half hour. But, yeah. So for here, I typically like trying to save at least orb. I like trying to save orb and rune for every single crystal phase. Here I didn't. So I'm just gonna be bare bonesing the first one. But typically people are saving their cooldowns for the shard phases anyways. For me, I'd also highly recommend, if you can, alter timing the Unleash Destruction phase, which is just the knockback that he did that does a bunch of damage. It's a pretty good thing to alter time. It obviously saves the healer from healing you and puts you back to the position you were prior. You can obviously ice block them, you can G-invis them. It's really the only form of damage that's going to be going out in the fight. For me, I'd also recommend, I am blizzarding anytime there's two crystals close to each other. Obviously, 2 target is when you should be blizzarding. Kind of min-maxy. I was basically told for our group to do the ranged ones if possible. I'll always, even if I am doing the ranged one and there's only a single one in ranged, I will always place Blizzard on 2 of them. Just helps with Frozen Orb uptime and, you know, whatever, but... So now here I'm assuming I'm going to save my my Rune of Power for the next rune phase. I am also moving out of this area and moving closer to the team. When Thundering comes out or anything like that, I want to make sure I'm actually close to them so that I have a chance to clear. I actually didn't end up saving Rune, which I'm kind of surprised with, but I do end up having the same hero because the timers... I have 20 seconds left. And obviously our group's gonna need hero, so losing my personal lust, but having the whole entire group get it is better. Obviously not too big of an issue because I'm obviously gonna get it another use as well anyways, but... I did say I'm lusting shards, so normally you can just lust on cooldown. So I would be lusting right here, but I'm saving it for a little bit just to make sure that we have damage for the next shard phase. The shards are really the only thing that can actually wipe your group. Unless you obviously get hit by a frontal or the tank dies from the tank buster or whatever. This tank buster Dragon Strike. So I did lust a little early there. A little earlier than normal. Our person was calling for lust. We obviously have a minute 15 left in the key, so obviously it's still going to be close. So Unleash Destruction is the knockback here. I decided since I saw an orb behind me, I didn't want to risk it, and I'm deciding to ice block. Um, I'm not sure exactly what the knockback happens with. Well, I know the knockback happens with the least destruction, but I've had a time where I ice block cancel, so I ice block just the original knockback and then cancel it, and I died to an orb that was like way behind me. I'm wondering if you don't like, if the knockback considers your character where it would actually be. So I'm just setting up my entire ice block for the entire knockback duration just to be safe. But yeah. Here, obviously, using Blizzard for... I did actually end up saving Orb for this scenario. And Rune of Power, so I have a bunch of burst damage for the orbs, or the shards. Obviously still a pretty hard key, but we timed with 18 seconds left. I had 3 basically pretty bad deaths to where I lost basically the entire duration of my Icy Veins. The one in the second boss room, and then I died twice. I died from the Shoulder Slam, and then rezzed and died from the Frog Leap. So I did obviously lose a pretty decent amount of damage in those 2 deaths. But yeah, that's the times 25 Azure Vault. You see the breakdown. Obviously, if I'm alive for those 2 things, I have obviously more damage. I don't know if I would... I'd obviously have I'd probably have around the Warrior's damage, being dead for that entire Frog phase and losing Icy Veins uptime. But obviously that, you know, people are obviously going to make mistakes. It happens. You just got to minimize them. But yeah, we ended up timing this with 17 seconds left. And we had actually never done that route. We had done it. We actually tried it in a 24 and had so much time left. We're like, yeah, we're just gonna send it on the 25 too. Typically, we don't do the frog route. We had been doing the rings route and getting 100% before second boss, but we decided that second trash with fortified raging would kind of just fuck our tank up. So our tank had ran this in a previous key this week and said he really liked it, so we were gonna give it a try, and it did seem to obviously work. So a 25 AV is no joke. The timer is not very lenient on this key. So yeah, that is the commentary for the 25 Azure Vault.